Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sarah Backley, and I'm Associate Director at the British Chamber of Commerce in Japan. Welcome today to our webinar titled Storytelling: How to Persuade, Convince, and Engage Your Clients. You will have seen that our recent webinars have been quite heavily focused on COVID, but the topic of storytelling and the importance of it really runs through everything we do. And it's a vital part of our everyday communication, yes, but it's also an incredibly strong tool when implemented efficiently in business. And as the title suggests, we'll be looking at storytelling today as a way to engage your client beyond facts and figures, which, let's face it, are a lot less memorable than a well-told story. So to do this, we'll welcome someone who many of you probably be familiar with, Dr. Greg Story. He's president of Dale Carnegie Training Japan and best-selling author of Japan Sales Mastery. And he'll take us through the importance of storytelling and his techniques on how to master it. Just before we get started, I wanted to quickly mention a couple of the other events we have coming up at the Chamber. Next Tuesday, the 26th, we have a webinar with representatives from the British Council, British School of Tokyo, Rosetta Stone Learning Centre, and Quest Tokyo for a discussion on how the education sector is dealing with the impact of COVID-19. And the following Tuesday, which is the 2nd of June, we'll have our first ever virtual annual meeting. And it's a shame that we can't have our annual general meeting in person this year, but we're really looking forward to bringing you all together online to go back over the last year and to give you a chance to meet the new executive committee. So please look out for details on both of those coming very soon. Before we get started, final reminder from me, please send in questions through the Q&A function, which you'll find on the bottom of your screen. I know Greg has planned some time at the end of his presentation to answer any questions you may have. We may go over the 45-minute mark, but at the end of the session, we'll have Greg's email up on the screen. So in case there are any burning questions that you didn't get a chance to cover, or even if you just fancy saying hello, you can contact him there. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Greg. He'll take us through his presentation on the power of storytelling. Thanks, Greg.
Okay, let's bring it up then. Let's get it on the screen. There we go. Okay, well, welcome everyone. This is going to be a very important subject for all of us because storytelling is fundamental to being successful, for having influence with companies, internally, clients, industry groups outside of that. Just a little bit about myself. As Sarah mentioned, I have been in Japan a long time, 35 years altogether now. I'm the president of Dale Carnegie Training Japan, and I've published 2 books, Japan Sales Mastery and Japan Business Mastery. So I'm very focused on doing business in Japan. So I'll talk a little bit. Let me just adjust that down a little bit as I'm standing back a bit so you can see I'm standing today. Dale Carnegie has been around for a long time, 108 years around the world, 57 years in Japan. We teach in more than 30 languages, got more than 9 million graduates around the world. We cover the world, basically. Wherever you are, probably we are. We've got many famous graduates. Of course, Warren Buffett, the world's most successful investor, is one of them. Ronald Reagan, another one. My favorite, of course, Chuck Norris. In Japan, we have a current president of Shiseido, a very famous graduate. And these books are very famous in the Japanese versions. Also, you know them as How to Win Friends and Influence People, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, very famous books by Dale Carnegie. And Dale Carnegie himself was the classic rags to riches American success story, the American dream. Poor farming family in Missouri, Maryville, Missouri, born in 1888. And then after college, he became very successful as a salesperson, wanted to become an actor, saved up his money, went to New York, went to one of the most famous academies for acting there. And then he realized, like a lot of people who get into acting, it's a pretty tough gig. And he thought, well, this isn't going to work out as a living. Why don't I become a teacher of public speaking, start his own company, 1912 in New York with the YMCA there as a partner. And, you know, over the next 24 years, he was experimenting with content, experimenting with curriculum, published a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, 1936, global bestseller, massive, absolutely massive. Been in Japan a number of times, 1932, twice in 39, back in 53. 10 years later, we opened in Japan in 1963. So today we're going to look at a number of things: how to use storytelling to capture the attention of your audience, how to use stories, anecdotes, parables, deliver key messages, and how to help people take action from the stories you're telling. Now, one of the issues about storytelling is that it's basically tied up with public speaking. However, for most people, public speaking is terrifying. And so they shy away from public speaking altogether and therefore telling stories. And I'm an absolute classic example of that. In around about 1978, 79, one of my professors was marrying one of my classmates, and he asked me to be the best man at the wedding. I was terrified, absolutely terrified, because that meant I'd have to stand up in front of the wedding party and make a speech as the best man. So I ran away. I gave him some pathetic excuse about I wasn't experienced enough. I think we should get Bruce Logan to do that. And someone else did it. I didn't do it. Simply because I was scared. All those people looking at me. So I gave up the opportunity to be the best man to give that speech. And I avoided speech making for a very long time until 1983. I was at Sofia, I was at Georgie, finishing up my master's degree. And the international department of the university contacted me and said, hey, listen, the Sundar Yobiko want to have a speaker in Japanese, would you come and give a talk? So I agreed. And my kate kyoshi, my tutor, Miss Higashi, very kindly helped me. We wrote out the whole speech in Romaji. And so I'm giving this 25-minute talk and I am nervous. And I am luring the audience and my hands are shaking, my heart's pounding, I'm dying. And so I finished the speech in 8 minutes because I was so nervous. It was a total catastrophe, absolute nightmare. And it broke every rule of public speaking. Probably shattered the lives of all those Sundar Yobiko students. In fact, with those students, you know, I thought I was going to get something like this, look more like that. So, you know, it was terrifying, but I started on a path after that where did I go and get training? Did I do anything about it? No, I just sort of my way through it, try to work it out myself. Eventually I got training. Eventually I got better. And now I'm at about 550 speeches, I think, altogether. So part of the storytelling is linked to the public speaking. We've got to get over the fear of public speaking to be able to tell the stories. So this number here, this is the number, this is the percentage of people who generally fear talking in public. And I was definitely one of those people. And this number, 47, is the number of times in our working careers that we will have to give a talk. So if you think about it, those two numbers are very significant. When you look at that 75% number, and you think about the number of times over the course of your working life that you're going to have to talk, that 75% number becomes very critical because what it says is the people at the top are very few in number. I can actually take out 75% of my rivals and my competition in my career if I become better at speaking, if I become better at giving talks. And I'm going to have to give a lot of them anyway. So why don't I go and get trained or read books on the subject or do something to prepare myself for it, because this is going to be a reality. So it's a great tool. You've got to be able to get over the fear of public speaking first. But once you get over that, then there are some main reasons why we should use it. So we know that storytelling is very fundamental as part of our communication. Every culture all around the world have it as a fundamental part of storytelling in passing on the history of the tribe, or parents telling their children stories. And here's a point. Don't let your competitors monopolize this powerful tool. You should not just become a speaker. You should become a master storyteller who can win success in business. So when can we use it? This happens all the time. We have bosses. We want them to do things that we think are a good idea. We've got a good idea. We want to put some money behind a project. We've got to explain the numbers for our section, or we've got to explain the marketing plan. Now, there are lots of occasions where we have to do these things. You'll find yourself much more successful if you use stories. When you've got a good idea, well, you'll find that people are very critical of your idea. It doesn't have enough context. The story gives you context. For example, when I was working at the Shinsei Bank, I had an idea to revolutionize the bank, retail bank, and put all these very talented young people into positions of revenue, overview leadership, and to move all the crusty old branch managers around and have them perform a different role. Now, if I just went to my boss and said that, I don't think he would have gone for the idea. But what I did was I went and I talked about how I'd been training the team and how I found all these really great young people and they're smart and sharp, very talented, and how I tried to really work with the older senior branch managers, but they were very conservative, very stuck in their ways. And I couldn't see a way to really improve the performance with this group being responsible for revenue. So I set the context, I set the scene. And then I gave the punchline, but I think we should now flip it and have these people go up and be responsible for revenue, have the branch managers be the grey hair in the branch to give some solidity. And my boss went for it because I gave context and background to the idea rather than just the idea. So if you're selling a project or you're talking about the marketing plan or the business plan, you've got to put it in context. And that's where the storytelling becomes very, very beneficial. Or it might be with the client. In my book, Japan Sales Mastery, I tell a lot of stories in that book around incidents that happened to me in sales, ideas that I'm trying to flesh out to suggest to people and wrapping them with stories. So when we're working with a client, we can use stories to build rapport. We can talk about something we have in common with the client. Maybe we lived in the same city. Maybe we went to the same university. Maybe we studied the same subject. Maybe we had some common interest. We're looking for commonality to build up that rapport. And telling stories about things we've done helps to do that. Or we might be looking to get into questioning for the client. We've got to get permission to ask the questions. Then we start to ask questions. We want to find out their story. What is the story of their company? Where are they now? Where do they want to be? What's stopping them? Why aren't they there? And then when we're presenting the solution, we want to be wrapping that solution up in a story about why this is going to work. And it might be that they are nervous about the thing we're proposing. So there are objections. So we want to tell them where this has worked before with another company and tell their story of success so that the client says, oh, okay, I see where that'll work for us. And then, of course, we close a sale. Another area, too, is if you're trying to get investment, if you've got a startup or you're looking to expand your business, get investors, well, you've definitely got to tell the industry story, the technology story, the market story to do that. And these are things you just can't go and say, well, we need money because we've got a good idea. You've got to talk about how you came up with a good idea, how you worked on the technology, how you see the market. You know, what's your differential example or advantage in the market? That means comparing with somebody else, telling their story and contrasting with your story. You tell the story of the numbers, you tell the story of the risk. All of these things are how you explain what you're going to do. And then the capital investment, why that number? And you tell the story about why that's the right number for this particular investment. Or you might be representing the company. Now, as you go up in the ranks, this will happen more and more. You'll be the one telling something good about your business, why you're really good at what you do, what's your track record, why your people are great, what's your vision, what you've learned, what have been the triumphs and disasters. You might be actually doing this as a public presentation like I'm doing right now. And so this is where you've got to have that detail about the company and present your company in a certain way that the people who are listening to it get brought into the detail. It's no good saying, oh, our company is great. Okay, why is it great? What makes it great? What have you done in the past to make it great? What are the things you've contributed to the community? What have you contributed to society? What have you done for technology? What have you done for mankind? These are the things you've got to relate back into the story of the company when you're telling the business of the company. So I gave a very quick background on Dale Carnegie. I talked about poor farming family, was top in sales, tried to become an actor, went to New York, couldn't become an actor, got into training, published a bestseller, became very famous, then established in Japan. All of that is the Dale Carnegie story, which is very easy to remember. I just say, hey, Dale Carnegie's great. That's not the same as telling you the Dale Carnegie story of how he became great. That is more memorable. Now, these days, we've got COVID-19 at the moment, so there's a lot of people unemployed, there's a lot of companies shutting down. It's a little bit of a time in the market, but up until February, You know, getting people to join your company and stay in your company is extremely difficult. Recruiting people extremely difficult. And when COVID-19 goes away, all that will return. So when we're trying to get people to join our businesses, we need to tell them the background of the company. What's the history? What's the strengths? What's the exciting part? Talk in terms of the story of what's exciting. What's it like in the daily work? What's the environment like? What's the culture like? What are the people like? So you tell stories about those people. You tell stories about the culture. You tell stories about the history of the company, what things look like in the job. That storytelling in this type of circumstance makes your business seem very, very attractive, as opposed to, oh, we have 3,000 people, you know, we do this, this, and this in the sector. Very dry, very data-driven, basically pretty boring. Wrap it up in the history. Who started the company? Why did they start it? What were some of the trials and tribulations? What are the triumphs? What are the failures? How did you survive? Who are some of the interesting people who worked for you? What is the culture like? Give me examples of the culture. These are all things we can use storytelling for to really flesh out what it means to work for this particular company if you're trying to hire people, or particularly trying to keep people as well. Now, we all have our own personal brand, and you've got to tell your story as a professional. Why are you a professional? You know, I mentioned before, I've been in Japan for 35 years. I have a PhD in Japanese decision making. You know, I run a company here. We do leadership, we do sales, we do communication skills, we do presentation skills. There's all these things around what I do as a professional, why I'm an expert in my area. And I have to be able to tell the story of that expertise. You know, the years that I studied about Japan, the years I've lived in Japan, why you can trust me, why you should remember me. So how about you? What have you done? What has your history been in Japan? Where's your expertise area? What are some things that you've done that make you someone who's going to stand out in your particular market, in your particular business? What can you do for client companies, you personally? Because we don't buy the company. We might buy the interview with you because of the company brand, but after that, we buy you. Because if we meet you and you're great, we assume everybody down at your company are great. The reverse, though, also applies. If we meet you and we find out, yeah, you're not very impressive, then we think, oh, nobody in that company is very good, because you're representing your own company and your own brand. So we'll buy your brand, we'll buy your personal brand. And that's where it's no good saying, I'm the greatest, I'm a stable genius, that type of thing. That doesn't cut it with people. You've got to tell people how experienced you are, how professional you are, how capable you are, through stories of what you've done. That's where we'll believe what you've done, the credibility, the evidence of what you've done. So start working at what's your brand story for yourself. Now, part of my brand story is writing this book and also Japan Business Mastery. This book is very unique. It's about to go into Japanese. It's being actually the translation being stopped at the moment because of COVID-19, but the Japanese version will be very unique too. It'll be the first book ever published in Japanese by a foreigner, using that very deep insight into Japan coupled with global best practice to take a different look at how Japan works in the selling area. So this builds my brand, it builds a credibility, because when you read this, you read the stories of my successes and failures in selling. And when I got on the cover of Eurobiz, I had no idea they were going to put the word sales master on the cover. But that does a tremendous amount for my personal brand. But I couldn't have gotten on that cover if I hadn't written the book. And I couldn't have written the book if I hadn't been in the trenches, if I hadn't done the hard yards, if I hadn't had the stories to tell and the experience to tell to make it relevant for people. So this is where you've got to start thinking about the stories you've got and how do you marshal those stories to help project you as a credible person. So again, why would we trust you? You know, why would we remember you? We'll remember you because of the stories you tell us about the things you've done and where you've learned things and where you've found things didn't go well, and tell us the failures as well, because that gives you more credibility. So as a tool, there's a number of things here. You know, for example, we see this in movies, you know, like the first one, number one, that's probably Game of Thrones, you know, Game of Thrones right there. Number two, Rags to Riches. That could be Pursuit of Happiness, Will Smith. The Quest, that could be The Hobbit. Voyage and Return, that could be the Iliad. Rebirth, that could be Rocky. any number of comedies, any number of tragedies, any number of mysteries, Rebellion Against the One, that could be Star Wars. So we are familiar with these sorts of movie plots, but we're not in the movies, we're in business. So what are some things that work for us? So we need some warning stories, success stories, humor stories, branding stories, parables. For example, a warning story. Now, as a training company, we do a lot of sales training, obviously. And one of the things we always say to companies is it's really important after training to have follow-up, because people return to their old habits unless the managers make sure that people are doing the new things they've learned. So we're doing this training for an Italian company here. And sure enough, we do the sales training, all great, all Japanese staff, Japanese president, all good. We do the training, but none of the senior leaders, none of the senior managers in that company did anything with the content of the training thereafter. Nothing. So naturally, when that happens, people go back to the old habits. And we had to come back. That president, by the way, got fired. The new president came in, and we had to come back in and redo the whole training for the new president. So the warning story there is do the follow-up training. So that's an example I would tell about that Italian story. The president got fired, new president came in, the managers didn't do their job, as a warning story to do follow-up, for example. Success story, I might talk about Brioni. Brioni is a very well-known Italian high-end fashion business fabric maker. They do men's suits, very expensive men's suits. We did a customized program for Brioni. We taught all of their sales staff in Japan, all of them. Now, before the training, I went to Brioni, one of the Brioni stores, very expensive, very high-end. And I'm looking up, I'm sort of like a mystery shopper to get an idea what the service is like, what the people like. They didn't know who I was. And I picked up a Meishi Ide, a Meishi business card holder, leather one, Sanjuman. Woo! Put that one right back down. That's expensive. So they're a very high-end brand for wealthy people. So if you're dealing with very wealthy people, then you have to be very credible as a salesperson. You've got to tell the story of why that leather in that Meishi Ide is worth the Sanjuman. Why this particular scarf made out of spider silk is worth so much money. You can't just say, oh, well, this is a great scarf. You've got to tell the background of how they develop the spider, how they weave it. Or humorous stories, these are hard. I don't have many humorous stories. I'll tell you a sort of semi-humorous story. I was recently coaching this is back in February, very, very senior person in Mazda, the car company. And he was going to go to Shanghai and give a speech at a big car show. So I'm coaching him one-on-one. He really improved. We really worked on it. It's great, fantastic, all ready to go. Literally 2 minutes after we finished the training, whole car show's cancelled. He never got to deliver that speech. So, you know, it's sort of a semi-humorous, and COVID-19 killed the whole thing. Hopefully one day I'll be able to give that talk. Or it might be a branding story. I could talk about, say, with Dale Carnegie. They encouraged me to write the books. They've got their own book, new one called Sell. They got Dale Carnegie in the Digital Age, which is an update to how to win friends and influence people. And I encourage them to look at the input of IA and how this would affect the whole HR business and how it affect companies. And so they create a whole bunch of thought leadership on that, doing world surveys, etc. So they've really developed the thought brand, because one of the problems when you're a 108-year-old company, people think, oh yeah, they're old, you know, it's dusty, cobwebs. So trying to encourage Joe Hart, the president, let's get more energy into the thought leadership. Show, yes, we're a very long established, very mature company, but we're also very innovative. We still have the cutting edge of what we're doing. And a parable, this could be an interesting way of expressing an idea. In this case, I joined Dale Carnegie in 2010, and they have every year an annual convention. That year, the convention was in Miami. So I fly to Miami, and I meet Dorothy Carnegie, the daughter of Dale Carnegie, which is a big honor. She's the chairperson of the board, and she's a 51% shareholder in the business. So anyway, we're at this evening event, beautiful outside event, you know, it's Miami, nice weather. And she introduced me to this guy, just having a beer, and I'm chatting with this guy, and I looked at this guy, I thought, you know, it doesn't quite look Dale Carnegie to me. He had sort of long ponytail down to here, and he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt. It turns out his company actually provides the mics and the lighting and all the sort of backstage coordination for the conventions. And he's a vendor to the company. And he says, oh, I really like your company. And I said, oh, yeah, why is that? He said, well, I like the way you guys are very congruent between what you say and what you do. I said, oh, yeah, because I'm new to the company, right? Like, why is that? And he said, well, you know, we do these sorts of conventions for all the gurus, right? So we're on the mic sets. So we can hear everything front of stage and everything back of stage. And what we see are people, gurus, out the front saying one thing, and you should be like this, and you should do that, and blah, blah, blah. But when they get back, and they're not being heard by the audience, but we can hear them. The way they talk to our staff, the way they talk to their own staff, it's completely antithetical to what they're saying everyone else should do front stage. So what I like about Dale Carnegie is what you guys say in the front of house, what you say behind the stage doesn't change. You're congruent. So that was very good for me to hear that. I think, oh, great, I like that culture. I think that's important. I'm happy to hear that. So that's a parable I would tell as a story to tell you that my company's got a lot of credibility and we really walk the talk. We believe what we say, we do it. Think for yourself. What would be some warning stories, some success stories, human stories, branding stories, parable stories that you can create when you're giving your talks? And there's 3 elements of impact. Very, very simple. The structure must be clear. PowerPoint gives you navigation. I navigate through this talk following the PowerPoint, so I don't have to think. I've just got to remember what I've got to say for each section. But it's got to be very logical. It's got to be very clear. The content is a quality. It has to have very good quality, have value. Otherwise, who wants to listen to it? Waste of time. The delivery, though, is critical. You can have a great structure. You can have great content. Most people make a big mistake. They think, oh, I've got great content, therefore I get a free pass. I don't have to be a good speaker. No. If I talk in a monotone for the remainder of this speech, you will all collectively die as an audience. I will be killing you one after another. Even if the content was brilliant, even if the structure was brilliant, if the delivery isn't right for the story, people will switch off. And today, mobile phones, they're gone. Got to really make sure that the delivery part is worked on. And so there's some techniques for that. So word emphasis is very, very clear. For example, this sentence, I didn't say your sister, has 7 different meanings. Can you see the 7 different meanings? Have a think about it. Can you see the 7 different meanings? I'll give them to you. Same sentence, but with different word emphasis, changes the meaning completely. I didn't say he hit his sister. 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 I didn't say hit his sister. I didn't say he hit his sister. I didn't say he hit his sister. By changing the emphasis on the word, I had completely changed that sentence. So word emphasis is very key. In a sentence, not every word should have the same strength. When you're telling a story, you've got to hit certain keywords with either power in or power out. All right? So having pauses, letting people think when you're telling the story a little bit. Don't just go bang, 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 bang. It's too hard to follow. You've got to have little gaps in there so people can digest the story. And that's why the pacing, if it's too quick, people get lost. And then voice modulation, as I say, that monotone, nightmare. Now, for Japanese people on this call, you have a big disadvantage because your language is a monotone. That's why in Japan, you ever speak to a Japanese audience, never turn the lights out. You turn the lights out, everyone's asleep. They're trained to go to sleep because they're used to this monotone voice. You've got to have highs and lows. That's what keeps people interested. Strength in, strength out. You can have dialogue. You can reproduce conversations in your story between 2 different people that people would know. And you might have a degree of detail on there that makes it interesting. And movement is things like, you know, I'm standing. I chose to stand. I could sit down. I did want to sit down because it's quite difficult to have enough body language when you're giving a talk like this. Particularly, I'm, you know, tiny little box on that screen. So it's hard to have impact with body language in such a small piece of real estate. So I chose to stand. to give myself more ability to use my whole full body, have some movement in my hands, upper body anyway. And enthusiasm, bring passion. If you're not passionate about your subject and the story you're telling, well, we're not going to buy it. We are just not going to buy it. No matter how good the structure is, no matter how good the content is, we will not buy it because that passion in the delivery part is not there. So what makes a good story? Well, you know, you've got to have some people. This is a 3-minute story. There's some characters in there. There's some context. There's some sort of conflict or opportunity. There's a resolution and there's a message. So I told that story before about my fear of public speaking. The characters in that story were me, my university professor, and my classmate, and Bruce Logan, who actually did the speech instead of me as the best man. The context of that story was I was terrified of public speaking. And the conflict there was I ran away like a chicken, like a scared rabbit, hands in the air, screaming, no, 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 I don't want to do public speaking. And the resolution was, eventually, I got the training. And I've now done nearly 550 speeches. And the message is, get the training. Don't be like me. Overcome your fear of public speaking. So in that story, it's not a very long story, but it has all of those elements in there. The conflict was my fear. I overcame the fear, right? There's always a little bit of tension somewhere. They agreed with the idea. They agreed with the project, or they stopped the project, or they stopped the idea, whatever it might be. Your story will have those elements in it when you tell it. So when you're designing it, put characters into the story, and preferably people that you know. Now, for example, most of you know Paul Madden. Paul Madden is the British ambassador to Japan. He is a great storyteller. I met Paul Madden when I was a consul general in Osaka back in maybe around about the year 2000. Can't exactly remember now. I was a consul general for Australia. He was a consul general for UK. We met them, and then years later, he went to Australia as ambassador, went to Singapore, came to Japan as ambassador. We met up again. I've been to many British Chamber functions. He's really good. When you listen to his stories, he's got people in them. He's got some sort of, he's very good, very humorous actually. He's great at telling a humorous story, much, much better than I am. But there's always that some sort of context, some sort of message in there. So if you think about it, you can do the same thing. It doesn't have to be a long story. Keep it short, but get these elements in there. It'll work for you. A 1-minute story is also something else you can do, which is very compact. Now, you may not have a lot of time. You may be short on time. You may have a business plan you want to get agreed to. You may have a project you want to have agreed to. You may have an idea you want people to follow. If you go straight to the action, if you say, we should do this, the middle bit there, the action bit, I'll guarantee you, with no context to that action, you'll have an audience full of critics who are all sitting there thinking, oh, that won't work. Oh, we tried that. Well, that's not a good idea. I didn't think of it, so it's a bad idea. It's much better to go to the incident first, the context first, then tell the action, and then the benefit. Most of the content should be in the context, the incident, and very quick action, very quick benefit. I'll give you an example. The action I want you to take, I'm giving you the punchline early. The action I want you to take is to be more conscious about voice, right? Because voice is becoming much, much more important than in the past. Text has been dominant, but voice is going to become more dominant than text for search. And I'll tell you the story, right? So you don't know that, but that's the punchline, but I've already told it to you, so I'll see how I get there. So here's how the story would go. I was reading the newspaper last year, 8th of August, and I read this article, really grabbed my attention. Google announced, because of their capacity in AI, they are going to add to their text search capability voice search. That means all of the videos with audio, all of the audio books, all of the podcasts, everything that is out there can now be searched through voice rather than just text. Now, they're rolling it out in America, but it will come here. So we have to really make a bigger effort to get more content out there in voice to be found. And if we do, our content will get found ahead of our competitors, right? So the action benefit is get involved with voice, we'll get found. So that's the story, very, very brief story. But I didn't say, oh, we should all do voice. Voice is going to become more important. Voice is very good. You should do voice. People go, yeah, voice, nothing happening with voice. But now I put in context, you're more inclined to think, yeah, that makes sense. Voice, yeah, we should do something about that. So that's a 1-minute story. Put the incident up first, the background, the story first, action, then the benefit. So where do you get some ideas for stories from? As I say, I look at Paul Madden. I can tell Paul Madden is like a massive vacuum cleaner, picking up stories all the time. He observes things, he reads things, he hears other people's stories, he grabs those, he adjusts them, he fits them into a different context. We're doing the same things. Your clients have successes and they have disasters. Your own company has successes and disasters. They are all great stories. When you're telling in a public speech about your business, people want to hear what to do and they want to hear what not to do. So just telling only what to do is good, but telling what not to do, people really appreciate that because they say, oh yeah, you've suffered, you've been in pain, you've had a hard time. I can see, yes, you've got credibility, you know what you're talking about. I'm going to listen to you. So look for what clients have been doing, where they're successful and unsuccessful. Look for where your organization's been able to help them, been successful where you've had problems. And yourself too. You know, I told my story about my terror of public speaking from my own experience. And I talked about how my professor asked me to best man, and I said, no, I told a lie. I said, no, I don't have enough experience. You know, I could have done it. I had the experience. I didn't have the guts. I was scared. So I was reaching into my own experience to tell that story, and you'll know that story is real. You're not saying, oh, Greg just made that story up. You know it's real because the way I'm telling it feels that it's real, right? So it might be looking at sales websites, you might listen to reading blogs or listen to podcasts, watching YouTube videos. There's tons and tons and tons of information out there. You've got all manner of biographies, you've got books, you've got movies, you've got TV shows, you've got magazines, you've got more information at our fingertips today than is ever thought possible in the whole of human evolution. So there's no reason why we can't pick up stuff. Now, the difference is, up until now, you may have been an observer of these things. Now you become a recorder of these things and you say, oh, that's great. I could use that, make a note of that, write it down somewhere, type it, put in some Evernote or somewhere where you won't lose it. And that's your swipe file. So when you got to put together a talk, you think, okay, how can I get some stories in here to make my point? How can I make this more rich? How can I have more texture in what I'm doing? They're the sorts of things that you've got to be thinking about now as you go forward. And if you have that, you've got the structure, you've got the content, you work on the delivery, you work on your fear of public speaking, you think about the different types of stories, fearful, humorous, parable, you know, success, whatever it might be, then you will have enough there to build a solid base of having it doesn't have to be a 30-minute speech full of stories. It could be that, but it doesn't have to be that. But you'll find that this is good speakers, most of them are telling some sort of stories throughout their talk. Look at that and say, okay, how did they use that? What can I analyze it? What could I do? So just at the end here, I want to give you some free information. I talked about voice, the Presentation Japan series, Sales Japan series, the Leadership Japan series are all podcasts. Those numbers there, 187, 187, and 360 are the numbers of episodes. This is a free resource. It's on iTunes. And then you've got the Cutting Edge Japan Business, 133 episodes. That's on YouTube and on iTunes as a podcast. The Japan Business Mastery Show, that's 33 episodes. That's on YouTube and also on iTunes as a podcast. You'll hear lots of stories I tell in these different context pieces. They're free. If you want to find out about those, please have a listen to those. If you want to go to Google Play Store or Apple Store, you can get the Dale Carnegie Golden Book, which has all Dale Carnegie's principles in there, useful. If you're interested in doing some online training with us, then there's a whole bunch of things here. You'll find this on our website for power up your virtual team, become more effective in leading that, more effective in demonstrating how you help people through online. And we've got some programs coming up, some online programs. Again, these are on our website, How to Present Online. We're doing that one on May 25th in English. If you're interested, that's the one coming up in English. The others are in Japanese. So you can have a look at those if you wish, to give you an idea of some free programs. There's some there are paid for, but most of them are free. And again, I'll leave you with a quote from Dale Carnegie. Most of us have far more courage than we ever dreamed we possessed. I didn't realize I had the courage to do nearly 550 public speeches, of which probably 60% were done in Japanese. I didn't realize that. So we have some information there for you if you want to contact me. And we'll now take some questions. So, Sarah, do we have any questions as we get in the last part of the talk today?
Yes, we do. Thanks, Greg. One we have from Robert Helt, very timely. What are the challenges for effective storytelling in a virtual meeting? So what are the main challenges that you found, or any advice for people that, of course, we've all gone digital now. So any challenges that might be facing and how to overcome them?
Well, thank you to Robert for the question. I would say that virtual is very tiring. Zoom particularly is very tiring. If you have a Zoom meeting and everyone's got their cameras on, there's so much data for your eyes to look at, it really wears you out. My advice is turn all the cameras off unless you particularly need them, because it is tiring. So people's concentration spans become very short. So a long, rambling story is a disaster. People just switch off. Try to have short stories that are punchy. Try to have stories that have people in them that the audience might know. For example, I talked about Ambassador Madden, right? You know him if you're in the chamber. So it's a relevant person for you to relate to those stories I told about him. If you make it relevant like that, people they know, keep them very short, keep them very punchy. Even in a virtual meeting where people's concentration spans are under attack, I think you can still get the point across, but you've got to be very conscious of keeping them brief and concise. Yeah. Next question, please. Who has the next question?
Another one from Edward Vondra.
Yeah, Ed.
Every crisis is an opportunity. What do you think is a good business opportunity at this specific point in time?
Yeah, so the question is what about business opportunities for COVID-19 situation? Well, you've got a complete change in how we work, how we relate to customers, where customers are going to be located at home, at the office, how we'll communicate with them. We're not going to be seeing them face to face so much anymore. How are people gearing up for that? So there's a whole industry around how to teach people to gear up for that new normal they're talking about. There's also, you can see there are certain products and services which have really come to the fore. When did I use alcohol gel hand sanitizers? In the past, I had soap, didn't use it that much, and cleaning tools and that type of thing. Things like Zoom just took off like a rocket, WebEx, Teams, all of these different things. There's been great context there. I would look into your industry. I would look into where are the future weak points that will stay as a consequence of the things that have changed and will remain. Also, where are some things like retrospectively to go back to reinvigorate? We're coming out of lockdown and we're going back to some more normal sort of situation. What are some things that have been lost, some things that have been picked up again, some things that we could recalibrate for people, change them slightly? Like, my podcast that I've been writing on COVID-19 now since February. I stopped writing on just straight leadership or straight presentation skills, straight sales skills, and I made all of the topics relevant for this period in time. And once this period of time is finished, those topics are very specific to us now. They won't be relevant anymore, particularly. So it has a timeline on it. But what's coming after this? I would probably start thinking now about writing about things that are going to be relevant coming out of COVID-19, coming out of lockdown, and start preparing for that. So what products do you have for that? What content do you have for that? What insight do you have for that to help people make the bridge to go forward? Now, I don't think it's going to be, snap back like that. I think it's going to be more of a U shape that we come out of it, but we will come out of it very slowly. Where do we need help when we're coming out of it? Where do we need help on the way out of it? Be it a product, be it a service, I'd be looking for those areas and trying to create something that would suit in that area.
There's one from Graham. I mean, as you say, we've we've all been digital, and we're all looking forwards to when we can be face-to-face again. Graham says, I know you take networking seriously, Greg. So what about that in the digital world? So until we do get back to face-to-face, how do you recreate networking? What you would normally get out of it, I suppose?
Yeah, because I belong to a number of chambers and study groups, I am on a lot of webinars. I take part, I'm trying to find out information for myself, for my company. I participate in them. If I think it's relevant, then I can ask questions. Sometimes they allow you to speak. Just you would do it like a normal presentation. You can raise your hand for questions to speak, be recorded there. So for those sorts of things, also I'm giving, tomorrow morning, I'm on Inter FM with Guy Perriman interviewing me. I'll be doing a thing on a couple of other different groups, BIJ Japan group, doing a talk for them. So I'm putting myself out there for different groups who are interested to have people talk on certain topics, to give me some opportunity to really get myself in front of a bigger group, different groups I don't normally talk to. Try and take part in these events and where it's relevant, be a contributor, be a participant, put myself out there. I think as far as actually getting together in meetings, that will come. We're going back into the classroom from late June. We're opening our classroom up. We've got 18 protocols around how we'll do that in terms of safety. So everything's thought through, but we are going back in. And I think as we see, 39 prefectures unlocked and 8 to go, and we see vision on TV of people eating out and having drinks and mingling and going to do things, everyone will want to do that again. So I think people will be ready to get back in it, but we might be doing it at a certain distance. We might be doing it in a slightly different way physically than we did before. Might be less numbers allowed, but we will still get back to it, I think. So we'll be doing it perhaps at a distance for a while. And we might be doing it with masks on and all that sort of thing. That's quite possible, but I think we will eventually be doing it. Simply because I think the human beings need that contact. This sort of technology is pretty good, but it doesn't make up for, it's very hard to see my eyes. Well, I got my glasses on, that doesn't help, but even with Sarah, it's very hard to see Sarah's eyes and that little screen, what she's really thinking, what's going on in her mind, kuki o yomu, we say in Japanese, read the air. Very hard to read the air in this context, I think. So I think we will get back to networking, even though it might be slightly distance. I think we will get back into more touch with the clients. Again, it might be a slight distance. So I see us getting back to that. And in the meantime, I would say get on many webinars. If you can participate, if it's relevant, participate, engage with people, contribute to the discussion is what I would say.
No, I certainly agree. And I agree it's going to be a U-shape, but I'm definitely looking forward to when face-to-face is back, and that interim period in between now and whatever normal might be, what that will look like, which is what we're trying to plan as well. But in the meantime, we also have a few other webinars coming up, so please do look out for them. Greg, I think we're already a bit over time, so I might wrap things up here. I'd like to thank you again, Greg, for your time today, for your preparation, and for today, the hour. And please look out for webinars coming up, and see you soon.
Okay, thank you everyone. Keep well, keep safe. See you soon.